Hello everybody. So in my last couple of reels, the theme was talking about when we start to eat healthy, when we start doing medical medium protocols and detoxing, we are no longer using foods to suppress our emotions. And so when we start this journey, we can all of a sudden feel really overwhelmed with the amount of emotions moving through us. And a lot of us don't know how to handle that. And I want to share my own personal journey with this because it was a huge struggle for me in my journey walking through this part. And so I got sick 5.5 years ago. And before that, I had no idea that I really wasn't feeling or dealing with my emotions. Now, I thought I was because I was doing a lot of yoga. I thought I was sensitive to my stuff and other people's stuff, but in reality, I was doing a lot of things that were distracting me from feeling what was really going on, and obviously also distracting me from feeling some of my symptoms. I also had a very traumatic childhood. I was always very sensitive to trauma, sensitive to other people's stuff. I also, my sister passed away from an illness around when I was 21, so that was pretty intense too. And I hadn't processed any of that before I got sick. So let's go to part two. Okay, so part two of my personal journey dealing with emotions while doing the medical medium protocols. As I've said, we no longer suppress our emotions when we start doing this work. So when I started medical medium protocols 5.5 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of talk about emotions in this community, and I don't think there is even now. And I really freaked out when I started feeling my emotions. I not only became more sensitive to my own stuff, right, even my own symptoms, but I felt very alone and scared of the intensity of things I was feeling, and I didn't know how to release. And I also found that I was much more easily triggered by other people in people around me or people in this community, like becoming hypersensitive because all my emotions were all of a sudden on the surface. And you'll see, maybe you've seen that in the community, people kind of trigger each other a lot more because everybody's stuff is coming up to be dealt through, and a lot of us just have no idea how to sit into and work through our stuff, especially somebody like me who had such a backlog of things to work through, and I was hypersensitive, and I was just really scared of what I was going through, and I didn't have the practitioner I was working with had no idea how to help with this stuff. Okay, so part three of my personal journey of learning to deal with my emotions while healing with medical medium protocols. As I've said, we no longer are suppressing our emotions when we start detoxing because we're eating so cleanly. And so honestly, my first couple of years are really hard for me because of the emotions, and I constantly felt that things weren't getting released, crying a lot. I had a lot of days where I didn't want to do this journey anymore. And finally, I started learning how to work through this stuff. And so I had a couple missteps along the way trying to find the right modality, the right tools, the right teachers, because honestly, not everybody is emotionally sensitive. Some of us are more than others, and I was very emotionally sensitive, and I had a very profound ability to go deep, and not everybody's there, right? So, and so first, one of the first things I started doing that started working for me is I started doing energy healing on myself. And I did a lot, and it really helped me. And it was incredibly cool and profound, and I learned a lot about literally going into my body, finding things I could release. And what happened was my symptoms started healing faster, but eventually I hit a wall with that. So let's go to the next reel. Part four of my personal journey of learning to work through my emotions while healing with medical medium protocols. I've already said doing medical medium protocols, it stops suppressing our emotions, so all of our emotions start coming up quite intensely. And I will say it's one of the reasons some people don't do the protocols very cleanly or perfectly, because they're not ready to feel a lot of their stuff. I've seen this time and again. So I was so sick, I didn't really have that option to play with. I went full in. That's my personality. And so in the last reel I said I first did a lot of energy healing on myself as like one of my first steps, and that took a huge weight off of me. But eventually I got to the point where the energy healing wasn't working, and I really was faced with all this like shadow stuff that was coming up that I really needed to deal with, that I wanted to manifest like a different kind of life. I wanted to heal faster. I was really sick, like from the beginning of my journey. Like I was on Mattress Island for several years. So I started doing with inner child healing, and I found a practitioner I trusted at the time, and I started working with her once a week. And it took me, and that's a really beautiful tool to use, and it took me about a year of doing that, or 8 months of doing that, before I was able to really go to the next level of work. Part 5 of my personal journey of learning to deal with emotions while healing with medical medium protocols. I've already said that when we start detoxing, we no longer suppress our emotions, and it can be really overwhelming for some. So I left off talking about my journey with inner child healing, and when I got to about 8 months of that work, I started recognizing how energy moves in my body. I started experiencing releases in sessions that were quite big, and I wanted to do that again and to replicate that. And so at that point, it was very organic for me. I just started meditating a lot, and it was like 2 to 3 hours a day. I was working with some like energy work on shielding and stuff, and that was an entryway into my meditation. And I just got really, really curious in my meditation with different symptoms I was having. And what I started recognizing was that I could go into my symptoms, feel them, and release them layer by layer by layer when it was an emotional or energetic symptom, right? And I recognized that I could start releasing pain that way, and it just blew my mind. And so I started calling this tool somatic alchemy, and I started teaching my clients this, and I started seeing same results for them as they were doing it. Hey guys, part 6 of learning to journey with your emotions as you're healing with medical medium protocols. As I said, it can be really intense once you stop suppressing your emotions with food and you start detoxing. All this stuff can come up as it's like a backlog of all the things that you haven't worked through, and you're facing a lot of really intense old programming, old habits around how to relate to our emotions. And for me, once I started doing that somatic alchemy piece that I was talking about in the last reel, it really opened me up to a world of learning to be in a state of living and being where I accepted that I'm an emotional being, that I have emotions throughout the day, and that I'm willing to feel them and work through them. And I have dedicated space and time when I do this, as well in meditation, but it's just something I hold awareness with. And I also see like anything that's triggering me in my life is an opportunity for me to go in and do some inner work, to heal some inner child wounds. I've even done lots of past life work, and really addressing the root cause of some of these big emotional lessons I'm going through in this life. And the medical medium protocols give an incredible foundation to be able to go deep into that work. And if you're emotionally sensitive, you're going to want to learn to do this work and shift the way you relate and be with your emotions for the rest of your life.